Hi, this is Kevin Trainer. Welcome to my tutorial on installing the MySQL software on macOS. I'm recording this tutorial for my um, database course in the summer of 2019. And I'm hoping that this is going to have a pretty long life. Um, um, Now, I'm using for the tutorial, I'm using an up-to-date copy of macOS. So let's just take a look at what this is. This is macOS Mojave version 10.14.4. Okay. And when we go to install MySQL, we're going to install the current version of MySQL, which is the latest installation for MySQL 8. Now, one of the things that I want to say is that when you do the install, okay, if you're doing it for my class that I'm going to be starting next Wednesday night, well, then you're probably going to see exactly what I see, right? So following along and taking all the options exactly as you see them here is probably going to serve you pretty well. On the other hand, if you are doing this a half a year from now or a year from now, there's going to be newer versions of things. First of all, you'll want to apply all your operating system updates before you begin the install. Second, you're going to want to install the latest version of the MySQL software, unless I warned you off in class. Um, New releases of this come out all the time, and generally speaking, the newest version of things is usually the best for us in our class. Every once in a while, something will come out and it will break some feature that we're using, in which case we discover that and we warn everybody off that in class. But so if you haven't heard um, that you need to watch out for the latest version, then just take the newest version of whatever. Okay. All right. Here we go. So um, let's open the Safari browser and let's go and do a Google search for MySQL. Okay. And here's the top listing. It's the one for mysql.com. So we're looking for downloads. So let's go click on downloads. Okay. And you'll see this page is organized by which version of the product you want. Okay. And the version that we want is Community Edition. So let's click the link for Community Edition right here. And here are the products that we're going to want to download and install. We'll do them one at a time. MySQL Community Server. We're going to want to download and install that. MySQL Workbench. The MySQL setup is a pretty typical client server setup. And so MySQL Server is the server side, and MySQL Workbench is the client side. It's a graphically based MySQL client that's very handy. Okay, so that's what we're going to use. In my Windows version of this tutorial, I had them also download and install some example databases that come from MySQL, but I haven't found that option here, and we don't actually use them in the class. So that is going to be a difference between the two tutorials. Not to worry, we weren't going to do anything with them anyway. Okay, so let's go up to the top. Uh, MySQL Community Downloads. Go to the download link under MySQL Community Server. Okay, and then if you roll down the page, you'll start to see. And typically, the easiest version to install is the one with the proper macOS installer, which is a DMG archive file. This is the top one. And so we're just going to take the top one here, and we're going to click on download. And you always get the option to sign up for an Oracle web account. And if you don't have one, it's certainly something you should think about signing up for. I've had one for a long time. They send me email about stuff, and it's pretty helpful. But because I already have an account, I'm not going to go through all that. I'm just going to click on no thanks, just start my download. And you can see here down in the bottom, the download is starting. I'm going to pause until we're done so you don't have to watch paint dry. Okay, and it finished pretty quickly, so that was pretty fast paint. Because this isn't the only download that we're doing, I'm just going to minimize the browser, okay? And it automatically downloaded to download. So I'm going to open the Finder and go to the downloads, okay? And let's see what we have here. If I'm to just show you what we downloaded now, let me get rid of the things that are hanging around here from my practice session, okay? All right. All right, so that's what we just downloaded. And now we're going to double click on it to fire it up. It's a proper macOS installer. And that's going to give us a window. And we want to double click on this package icon. And the installer came up on my other monitor, so I'm going to pull it on. And I'm going to say continue. That looks okay. And now we're on the first panel of this dialog for the installer, and it's just kind of tell us what's going on. So we're going to click on the continue button again. And let's see, there's a license here. I think we may have to pull down to the bottom to get the agree button. Let's see. No? Well, let's click on continue. There's the agree button. Agree. And I've always done well just installing it in the default location, so I'm not going to try to change the install location. And I'm going to go down to the lower right and click install. And it's going to want to know my password. Going to put that in. Okay, and then click the install password button. So now it's reading and writing files. That goes pretty quickly on my machine. It's pretty fast. It's a question here of we have to choose which encryption we're going to use for the password. Now, when MySQL 8 came out in the beginning, We were having a little bit of problem with going with this new strong password encryption, but my experience has been that we're past that. So that's the default. We're going to take it. Um, the top radio button, use strong password encryption, and then click the next button. And we're going to have to enter a password for the root user. Now, in the Maroc textbook, if you go back to the appendices where it talks about the installation, he has you pick a easily remembered password. And the one that he likes is Sesame from the Aladdin story. Unfortunately, it's too short for the newest version of the installer. And so we're going to have to make it longer. So we're going to use the phrase open sesame, all one word. So OpenSesame. Okay. And it's a weak password, but that's okay because it's only going to be on our own laptop, for instance, and you have to log on to that before you can interact with the server anyway. So we're going to click on finish, and then it wants my password again. And I put that in. Didn't like it. Try this one. There we go. So that is pretty quick. So we're done there. We're going to close it. Do we want to move the installer to trash? I think we're done with it, so I'm going to say yes. It's a pretty big file. Okay, so we have that. Now, what can we see when we have it installed, but we don't have Workbench installed yet? Well, let's go look. If we go up here to the upper left and we click, we left click on the Apple icon. And then we come down and choose System Preferences. Okay, we can come down and we'll see down here at the bottom, in the bottom row, there's a MySQL icon. It has the dolphin outline. That's the MySQL logo. And we're going to give that a click. And what opens is a kind of a configurator preferences administration panel for MySQL. And we can see that we've got release 8.0.16. It looks like it's installed. We have an active instance, MySQL 8.0.16. There's a button to stop it, so I would say that it's already been started. By default, it's already checked the box to start MySQL when you start your computer. Now, either you check this box and every time you boot up your Mac, it's going to start MySQL, which really doesn't use a lot of overhead. Or if you uncheck this, you have to remember to come to this dialog and there'll be a start button to manually start it every time you use it. I recommend that you leave the check here so you don't have to worry about it. We don't have to initialize the database. We certainly don't want to uninstall. So it's fine just as is. Okay, so we have the product, it's installed, the server is started. How are we going to access it? Well, we're going to go download the client portion of it, which is called MySQL Workbench. So I'm going to go back to the Safari browser that I had, And I'm going to go, well, let's just go to MySQL. Let's go to the home page. So we go to the home page, and then why don't we work our way down again? Click click the menu item for downloads, and then go down to the bottom and take the link for the MySQL Community Edition. Now here are all the products we can do, and we want to go down till we get to MySQL Workbench, and there's a download link right under that we want. So let's give that a click. Okay, and usually the actual downloading links are down towards the bottom of the page. Here we are. It knows we're on macOS, so it's given us the right one. And here's the DMG for this. So this has a proper installer as well. I really like that. So let's go over and click on the download button. And again, since I already have an account with Oracle, I'm just going to click on no thanks, just start my download. And you can see that we're getting the download right now. This is even faster than the last one, so we're just going to wait for it. There it is. Okay, good. So we're done with the browser at this point. That's all the downloading we're doing. Okay. And what we have is MySQL Workbench Community Edition 8.0.16, just what we want. So I'm going to highlight this, and then I'm going to give it a double click. And it's going to fire up the installer. It should take a second. And then we should get an install window. So the install window came up on my other monitor. So let's kind of open it up so we can see it. Here it is right here. Now, what we essentially want to do is we want to take this MySQL Workbench icon, which has a combination of the dolphin and a wrench on it. That's the nice thing. And we want to left click and pull it over here and drop it. Now, the last time I tried it once and it really didn't work. Then I tried it again, and as I was pulling, I got sort of a green plus sign, and that time it works. So we're gonna grab it and pull. There's the green plus, and now we're just gonna let go, and that's actually going to do the proper copying. And I just heard a bonk in my headphones, so I think that's all copied now. So the name of the program is MySQL Workbench. It's right here. Okay. Now this is a program that we're going to want to do two things with at this part of the installation. One, we're going to want to double click on this and start it. And two, we're going to make sure that we keep it in the dock so we don't have to go to the applications folder to start it all the time. So double click on the file for Workbench in order to start it, and it will fire up, and we'll say no problem, open. Okay, I'm going to close my Finder now. And now down on the right at the bottom of the dock, I know I have a lot of things in my dock, but the icon for Workbench is all the way on the right. Typically that's where it is. And I like to keep it in my dock, so I right click on it, go to options, and say keep in dock. So later on, when I went to start Workbench, I just have to look for my icon and give it a click. Okay, so here we are. We've got this local instance 3306. 3306 is the number of the port that the server's on. So that's a pretty common name for it. Yours might be slightly different depending upon whether or not you've had another version of MySQL installed previously or not. So let's uh, the Workbench again is the client. It needs to connect with the server. We need a connection. And there's a connection for us already configured. The one that we want is this one called local instance 3306. You probably don't have the second one. That comes from my previous work on this machine. Okay. So I'm going to take this one on the left. I'm going to click and it's going to open up. Okay. And you might have been asked for the password. Okay, I think I wasn't asked for the password because the last time I ran this, I put the password in and I used the same one again. So if it should ask you for the password, put in the password Open Sesame and check the box. It says to keep that in the password vault so you don't have to do that all the time. Okay, now let's just take a quick look around. Over on the left here, we have this kind of navigation kind of panel. There's a panel. It's got two modes. It's in administration mode right now. If we click on the right side, it lists the schemas or the databases. So let's just look at what we have. We have a single database called sys. And sys is the database that it's pretty typical for these relational database implementers to kind of eat their own dog food. Okay, so there's a lot of internal settings that are recorded in a relational database called sys. So if we look at the tables, there's just one called sysconfig. And one of the things we can do is we can hover over this and then over this sysconfig table. Now to the right, there are three icons. The rightmost one has a look of a data table. If we click on that, it'll show us all of the entries that are in the sysconfig table. So a couple things happened here all at the same time. Okay, first of all, even though we clicked on an icon, okay, and you'd think we would just get automatic action, this a thing that's pretty typical for this product is it went into this editor window and it put in an SQL query that got us the result set in this result grid that popped up in the bottom of the editor window. And what we see here is we're seeing all the rows in the sysconfig table. Okay. There's one more panel that's interesting. This panel at the bottom is the panel for the console. So when we clicked on that icon that said that we wanted to see the data in that table, it composed a query and ran it. Every time we run a query, we'll see output down here on the console. And you can see it returned 6 rows. Okay, so there's a lot to be learned from this. There's a lot to be learned about Workbench. Okay, and one of the things that you do in chapter 2 is we kind of take a Workbench tour. Okay. Now, does Workbench look the same today as it did when Marak wrote MySQL second edition? No, it looks slightly different. Is it generally the same? Yes. Okay. Are the Windows and the Mac version exactly the same? No, they're not. They're very close to each other, though. Okay, so we're just going to have to feel our way through this. A lot of the exploring that we're going to do with respect to Workbench in order to get our sea legs with the tool is going to be when we're covering chapter 2 of the Marak book. There are some things up here. In the upper right, we've got the things we're able to click on. Let's see. So, okay, that toggles on the leftmost one, toggles on and off this administration and navigation pane. The middle one toggles on and off the console. That's good. And the right one, there's a feature we haven't seen yet. We're going to click on this, and we're going to toggle on this kind of helper thing. Now, I don't actually use this helper feature that much myself. We do cover it in chapter 2. It does have some neat features, but what I tend to do is I tend to click on this thing to suppress it so that I get more real estate to work with in the rest of the tool. Every time we create a query using the editor, every time we create a script, we typically want to get a new tab. So how do we get a new tab? Well, we can come up to this little toolbar area here, and the first icon is give me a new script editor tab, and you get a blank one. Okay. I think this is good. So let's close this. All right. So at this point, you've got MySQL installed. You've got Workbench installed. They seem to be working together. There's another tutorial coming up where we install the files from the textbook. I decided to do those two separately. So I'm going to say bye now, and we'll see you in that next tutorial. Bye-bye.